Hey, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to continue on from what we did 2 weeks ago. We looked at paragraph 9 of the sales contract when it comes to condition of the property. Today, we're going to talk about the home inspection contingency addendum and removal form, and answer any questions you might have about that. So this is the home inspection contingency addendum form. Form K 1342 at NVAR. If you downloaded the material from before, you can find this form on page 87 of the contract package. Now, let's just go through it, make sure everyone understands exactly what they're saying here. So the addendum is made to the sales contract. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Miscellaneous provision, what they have done is they pulled a lot of stuff that was down in the boilerplate later on, moved it up top to make sure we get it covered. So miscellaneous provisions, A, pursuant to the terms of this contract, that seller has to have all utilities in service. We cannot do a home inspection without utilities. And you find that requirement also in paragraph 9 of the contract. So always remember to tell your sellers, don't even think about cutting utilities off. I always recommend at least 3 days after settlement. I know they don't want any additional expense, but if they do go 3 days past settlement, and the other parties turn the utilities on, they won't both be charged for the utilities. And what happens if settlement doesn't take place when it was supposed to? You cut your utilities off in your home, not a pleasant situation for you. If for any reason these utilities are not in service, then this home inspection deadline will be extended, and this should be the same number of days that you put down in paragraph 2 to give ample time to reschedule your home inspector and make sure you have time to properly do it. After buyer receives notice, and notice being capitalized, remember that is a unilateral communication in writing from seller that all utilities in service. And I would think that an email in accordance with paragraph 6 would suffice. Okay. Now, paragraph B, pretty important. Your buyer doesn't want to lose their home inspection their home inspection contingency. So if that buyer fails to obtain an inspection report or fails to deliver a copy of the reports to seller, and once again, I would maintain that's in conjunction with paragraph 6 of the contract, where things need to be delivered to the seller, or fails to deliver inspection contingency removal addendum or notice voiding this contract prior to home inspection deadline, this contingency will expire, and we're in full force and effect with no home inspection and or radon testing contingency. Okay, which means if your buyer said, I'll take it in the condition it is in as of the home inspection deadline, but they didn't follow through the way they were supposed to, either voiding or asking for things to be fixed, then that's the condition those items will be in when they go to settlement. Okay. So any questions about that? Because I've seen this come up several times where, something wasn't done and the other side saying, well, you have no home inspection contingency. And I would agree with them. Okay. So if they don't do the inspection, or they don't deliver a copy of the report, or the removal addendum or notice voiding the contract, then they've lost their contingency. So if you are going to void your contract, you still need to deliver the inspection contingency removal form and the complete report. Okay. Now, 2, home inspection with option to negotiate repairs or void. So we are contingent until 9 p.m. X number of days after date of ratification. I usually ask for 10 days to make sure that we can get a quality home inspector out there. You know, some of them might be pretty busy now because we're starting to see home inspection contingencies and contracts again. Upon inspections of the property, and this is very important, by a licensed, if applicable, professional insured inspector in the state of Virginia, they have to be licensed with DPOR or they shouldn't be doing the inspection. So if they are not licensed with DPOR and they do this inspection, then your purchaser has probably lost their right to the home inspection if the other side catches it. Now, for the purposes of this home inspection contingency, you have to understand it does not include radon. It shouldn't be testing radon. It shouldn't be testing the well inspection or septic inspection unless otherwise agreed to by a separate clause or addendum. And there are separate addendums for well and septic. Radon is included on the same form, but it is a separate request. Now, this I get questions about all the time. If the results of the inspection are unsatisfactory to buyer, and here's the key words: buyer's sole discretion. Buyer will deliver, capital D, remember, to seller prior to home inspection deadline. Okay. Now, we've had sellers say, that's not a bad report. I'm not letting them out. They have no choice but to let them out. It's in the buyer's sole discretion. Okay. Now, here's the options of the buyer under this part of the addendum. You can send the entire copy of the report, okay, or reports, and a written addendum listing specific existing deficiencies of property that buyer would like seller to remedy, together with buyer's proposed remedies. So let's take a look at that form. Okay. And this is form K1343 NVAR. So if they're going to remove the addendum by asking for stuff to be done, this would be the form. You can use it multiple times. So it might be form 1, addendum 1, addendum 2, because you could remove the home inspection contingency, later remove the radon or well and septic, etc. Now, here are the key words to this form, and make sure you get this right. Upon seller's agreement to remedy specific existing deficiencies listed below, together with the buyer's proposed remedies. I don't care if you have to use several of these forms. You need to list each deficiency and its proposed remedies. We had one in the past that simply said, see home inspection report. And the seller was an attorney. Okay. So what happened is they said, did I see the report? To their agent. Yes, I saw the report. They signed it and they sent it back. At settlement, they had not fixed a thing. The buyer's agent was livid, and so was the buyer. And the lawyer just simply turned to the agent and said, hey, did I see the report? Yes. What did they ask me to do? See the report. They did not list a single deficiency, nor did they list the proposed remedy. So who do you think ended up paying for all those? Of course, the buyer's agent. Can't get lazy. I also saw here before, replace refrigerator and kitchen. So I'm driving home in my old S10 pickup, and someone's put one out at the curb, I pick it up, I take it home, I put it in my kitchen, I take the old one out, put it back in front of their house because they have pickup arranged for it, and they come and do the walkthrough. And this refrigerator doesn't work. And they said, but you didn't replace it. And I show them a picture. Here's the one that was here. I replaced it with this one, but it doesn't work. Well, you didn't ask for one that worked. So you gotta spell it out. Okay, spell it out. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting with the change to our form down here. Let's take a look at it. A complete copy of the reports attached for your information and review. Unless otherwise specified above, all repairs are to be performed by a contractor licensed to do the type of work required, and receipts or other written evidence that the repairs have been completed will be provided to or at the buyer's final walkthrough inspection or inspections of property. Now, let's think about paragraph 9 of the contract when it comes to this. Okay. Now, first of all, has to be a licensed contractor. Now, I've had people say, well, they did not give us the receipt, but they provided some other evidence the repairs have been completed. Maybe something from the person that did the repairs saying, yes, I've completed the repairs. Okay. So it says receipts or other written evidence. Of course, we want the what? The receipts to show that it's also been paid. Okay. Now, here's the part that's going to get kind of dangerous. If the seller agrees to make any repairs in this addendum, okay, then the seller will provide buyer or broker, professional insured inspectors retained by buyer reasonable access to the property to make final walkthrough inspections within 7 days prior to settlement and or occupancy. If you remember paragraph 9 that we discussed 2 weeks ago, under paragraph 9, the only parties that have the right to do a walkthrough or walkthroughs of the subject property would be the purchaser, the people on the contract, and their agent. However, if your seller agrees to make one repair on this addendum form, now they allow me to bring my home inspector back to do my final walkthroughs. Now, it would make sense that they would only be there to check the things that were done under this addendum. However, that's not what's going to happen. They're going to check everything over again. Okay. So if I'm a seller, would I ever agree to make any repairs anymore? Probably not, because I don't want to give this permission. Plus, can I even find a licensed contractor, okay, who can do the work in the last 10 days before settlement or 20 days? And if they can they even get the required material to complete the job properly? So I am probably saying no to any of this stuff as a seller. I may give you a credit for you to find your own contractors after settlement to fix the stuff, but I am not going to fix it for you. I do not want to extend that option to the buyer to bring those people back. Okay. And this addendum will not alter, modify, or change in any other respect this contract, and except as modified herein, all the terms and provisions of this contract are expressly ratified and confirmed and remain in full force and effect. Now, the last point about this addendum that I want to make, final walkthrough inspections. When do most people do their final walkthrough? Probably on the way to settlement. Okay. And if that's the case, this seller has all the way up until that time to complete any of the repairs in this addendum. And if you get out there an hour before settlement, which I'm always going to do that last walkthrough to make sure there was no damage to the property when they moved out. But if you wait until that time and this work hasn't been done, you've got a major problem on your hands, because at settlement, the settlement officer cannot make any changes to the closing disclosure. Okay. That would then have to go back to the lender for the underwriter to make the changes or approve the changes to the closing disclosure if there's a loan involved. Okay. Now, that would not require an additional 3 days for review by the purchaser. But if you're the underwriter and all of a sudden these problems are found in a property that you're going to make a loan on, do you think you might want to get somebody else out there to look at it? So what I would do if I was the purchaser, I would say these items had to be done, completed 8 days prior to settlement. Okay. Because we're coming out there on the 7th day before settlement to make sure they were all done properly. And if they weren't, it still gives us time to negotiate with the purchaser and the seller to come up with a dollar amount or some other program so that it can be submitted back to the underwriter so they could add this to the closing disclosure and get it to the purchaser, okay, at least 3 days prior to settlement. So we'll know whether or not they've agreed to it. Okay. The other option might be if I went ahead and got my own estimates from my own contractors to complete the work, and we could negotiate with the seller to go ahead and write certified funds to each one of those contractors to be held by the title company. That might be another option. But more than likely, if you're coming up with major things in a walkthrough, that lender's probably not going to make that loan. And if the bad part about all this is your loan commitment as a purchaser is probably going to expire about the same time as the day of settlement. So you can't have any delays, or you're going to have a major problem on your hand with your mortgage. And with the way rates have been volatile, there's no telling if that means your rate goes up or whatever. So you might even have some purchasers taking items that were not fixed just so they don't lose their loan. Any questions? Any questions here at all? Oops. Go back, bring that back up. Sorry about that. If you want to discuss it, you have to unmute yourself. I muted everybody and ask me. Let me bring up the contract again. I didn't mean to just leave that.
Larry?
Yes.
Okay, question. On the what's this? On the home inspection during the walkthrough, you say like the sellers or the seller agent can refuse a what's this? A oh my gosh, I'm losing. Can refuse to have the inspector to come. So what
No.
is the best way if that is being requested by the buyers? By the buyers.
Okay, so let's examine that. If there was any item fixed, okay, under the home inspection contingency removal, they have to allow the inspector in there. Okay. But if there was nothing done under that contingency, okay, nobody agreed to fix anything, then you don't have a right to bring the inspector. Okay.
Okay.
What
all right.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, but what if, okay, I am the seller's agent and I allow the inspector and the buyer to come because there are some things that needs to be fixed. But apparently after after everything they saw something again, all right? Which is not part of what has been negotiated on the home inspection contingency. What would be my move then?
Well, let me answer that question in a few minutes when we look at the home inspection. I mean, we'll pull up the walkthrough inspection form, and I'll answer that question then.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Any other
Okay.
questions about this? Okay, if not, let's go back to,
Larry, I have a question.
okay, yes,
You were recommended as a, on the seller side, listing agent. You recommended just your seller give a credit to the buyer to fixing things.
yes.
Now, if at the settlement, I think you were mentioning just because they need to provide the receipt, is that correct? To the buyer.
Well,
The seller,
well, not if they give a credit. Now, if your buyer is going to offer a credit to the buyer, your seller's going to offer a credit. You have to run that by the lender. Okay, you have to run it by the lender how they want this structured. You can't just give the credit because then the underwriter is going to pick that up and ask what the credit was for. So always if your seller is going to give a credit for the removal of these items, and the only reason I'm saying I would say no, I'm not going to fix anything, but I'll give a credit, is simply, well, let's reiterate. Can you find a licensed contractor? Has anybody tried to hire a contractor lately? Can you find a licensed contractor that can do the type of work in that time period? And if so, can you get the materials so that you can show the repairs were done, properly? And do you want that insured inspector coming back into the property and maybe finding other things wrong? Okay. And the question was asked, what if they find other things wrong? Well, let's just discuss it now, and then we'll look at the form. Well, if something is not in the same condition it was as of the date specified, okay, then there would be another item that the seller would have to fix. And the inspector is more than likely to find something that changed rather than a what? An agent and a buyer. So do I want these insured inspectors in there? Now, I also had to question, how do we prevent them from bringing these people with them? Well, if you take your lockbox down, okay, you take your lockbox down and make them make an appointment with you, okay, make an appointment with you, then you can be there at the property when they come to do their final walkthrough and monitor who's coming into the property and have a copy of your contract, okay? Because I don't want an inspector back out on my property, especially if there wasn't one in the beginning. And a lot of times people will say, well, I'll just bring an inspector with me to my walkthrough and see what they find. No, you're not unless there was some item on the home inspection addendum. And that's why I wanted to make sure we pointed that out. Okay. And I'll go back to paragraph 9 and show it to you in paragraph 9 after I finish this form.
okay, thank you, Larry.
Any other questions? Good questions. Let's keep them coming. Now it's time to find out, not when the problem arises, right? Okay, so back here, you can do the addendum form in the report, or at the buyer's sole discretion, they can send an entire copy of the report, and it might just be a minor item, but they changed their mind and don't want the house. They have every right to do that. And a notice voiding the contract. Now, I want to go to page 101 here for a second. K 1367. anytime your contract calls for a notice to void, home inspection, radon, any of those inspections, or POA or condo, you have to use a notice voiding the contract. This form is perfect for that, okay? Notice voiding the contract. The undersigned parties hereby give written notice voiding the contract to one, the seller or purchaser as follows, okay? So this would be because pursuant to paragraph 2A of the, or whatever was there on the home inspection addendum, of the home inspection addendum form, and to be effective, okay, the notifying party must deliver, and once again, that's capital D, paragraph 6 of our contract. Whatever's in there, I'm going to send it there and to their authorized agent, okay? But this is not a substitute for a release, okay? Not a substitute for a release. They're two different actions. So if you just attach your home inspection addendum to the addendum for release of a contract, you have not sent the notifying party a notice to void the contract. They don't have to let the buyer out. You've got to get it right. You need to send both forms. You need to send this notice voiding the contract and the addendum for release of the contract, which I will show you when we go back to the front of the package. Okay. Any questions about that? So right back here, they want to avoid their contract. Okay. Then we have to include an entire copy of the you have to include an entire copy of the report. Okay. An entire copy of the report and the notice voiding the contract, and you can attach the release of the contract form also. Now, notice kills, release just says, would you please let me out of the contract? Consider letting me out of all the terms of the contract and give me my money back. Two different actions, okay? Now, we sent over a list of items we want fixed on that addendum form. Now we're in the negotiating period. You have until 9 p.m. Give yourself enough time here. I see 3 days quite often. And if it's a weekend and people are out of town, it just doesn't give you enough time. I would suggest at least 7 days if you can get it. Okay. They may not allow 7, but at least try for it. After buyer's delivery of the inspection addendum, to negotiate a mutually acceptable, and here's the key words, written addendum addressing the deficiencies. Written, not oral, means nothing to agree until you get it in writing. So anytime during the negotiating period, you can make, modify, rescind, or alter as many offers and counter offers as desired. We can talk back and forth, but you have to have a signed written addendum within the negotiating period. If this says 9 p.m., 3 days, and your first day started today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday by 9 p.m., you have to have that written signed addendum. Otherwise, all offers and counter offers terminate automatically. I don't care if you're still talking back and forth at this time. If you don't have that written addendum, okay, then your buyer is in their election period. So if this date is getting close and you don't have a written addendum and you're still talking, then you need to get a written addendum to this contract to extend this negotiating period. Now, certainly, if everybody agrees to something after that negotiating period and it's in writing and they all go to settlement, then everybody's happy. But if something happens later and they get an attorney and they say, well, you know what? They didn't do this during this time period. Okay. And that means that offer terminated. You don't want to get into that argument, right? So get this extended if you can't get this written addendum signed by that time. Because once you get into this negotiating period, okay, which nothing in writing here, you're in the negotiating period, the parties are unable to reach an agreement, your buyer has an option to what? Void the contract by delivering notice to seller by 9 p.m. Give them 3 days if you can get it, following the end of the negotiating period. Otherwise, we no longer have a home inspection contingency, and this contract is in full force and effect, and that purchaser is taking that house with all those problems because they said they would take the property in the condition it is on the date of home inspection. So we can't mess this up. We have to get it done properly. Any questions about this form so far? Okay, and you can if you you know, if I have you muted, you can unmute and ask. Hearing no questions, let's go into home inspection with option to void only. And we see this quite often. 9 p.m. days after date of ratification. If I'm a listing agent, I want this to be a very short period of time. Very short period of time. After date of ratification, upon inspections of the property by that licensed professional insured inspector, we've already discussed that. For the purposes of this, does not include any radon, etc. But if the results unsatisfactory to buyer and buyer's sole discretion, buyer will deliver to seller prior to home inspection deadline that entire copy of the report and the notice voiding the contract. Don't mess it up. Okay. Now, what will happen quite often, if your property that's being inspected is in a POA or a condo, okay, they know that most agents aren't going to order the home these documents until they get a contract. And they have 14 days to get the documents to us from the POA or condo association. Okay, and that buyer has 3 days after that to review them and still void your contract. So if you're in a POA and condo, you can pretty much expect home inspection with option to void only. That buyer's agent is more than likely going to get back to you, and they're going to say, as a matter of convenience to your seller, they want to know if your buyer would be willing, your seller would be willing to fix these following items. Okay, because they know that they still have the right to what? Void under the POA in condo. Okay, so the flip of this would be, as a seller, since you know it's going to be at least 18 days prior to you receiving the documents for them to get out, 14, 3, and 1 to order, then you might say, yeah, you can do your home inspection with an option to void on the 21st day through settlement. Now they don't have that out for that POA or condo. But if there is a POA and condo, that's what I've found home inspection with option to void really means. Okay. Any questions?
Larry, I have a question.
Okay.
Take the home inspection with the option to void only. Then what happens if, let's say, in this case, I'm not sure. How do I explain it? Okay, so let's say if you found something that as a buyer agent, right? The
Uh-huh.
after the home inspection, and we talk to the listing agent, it says, okay, are you or your seller willing to fix those items? Because they know that we have HOA document, we can be out, right?
Uh-huh.
Use that reason. So because we select this number 3 option, void only,
Uh-huh.
we do have an option to negotiate with the seller and listing agent.
Well, technically, no. And it would, as a listing agent, that irritates me to no end when agents do that. Because if I can't trust you that this is what you really meant here, then why should I trust what you said the rest of your contract? So that's me personally, okay? But I know it happens all the time. If you thought you were going to be asking for things to be fixed, why didn't you just use option 2 in the beginning? Well, if you ask for option 2, they may not accept your contract because you might come back and ask for what? Things to be done. So let's just roll the dice, ask for number 3, and then go back anyway and ask for stuff because we had the condo and POA docs to get out on. To me, that doesn't show real good faith. I know it happens, okay? And if buyer and seller agree, then I would go ahead and then use this inspection contingency removal form and list the deficiencies and what they agree to fix. So if you call the other side and they say, okay, they said they'd fix those few things, okay, then get it in writing. Best way to do it, removal addendum form, okay? That answer your question?
Yes, Larry, but to follow up, let's say if, but as long as the listing agent and the buyer and the seller, they sign the addendum, even though with void only option, as long as they sign it later on, say, okay, then we're gonna fix this, then that they should be legit, right? Everything have to follow.
Yes, yes,
So I was just,
absolutely.
okay,
Okay, and that's why I said as a buyer's agent, I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to send this inspection contingency removal form over, right? And list the stuff to be fixed because in here now they've also given me permission to bring my what?
the home inspector.
My home inspector to the walkthrough. And that's probably not what they meant by saying, yeah, we'll fix these things, okay? If it wasn't done with this inspection contingency removal addendum, because if you just send an addendum over saying they agree to fix this, and this, you wouldn't have the right to bring that home inspector back to walk through because it wasn't included in your addendum removing this contingency. So that would be the only danger to just writing up an addendum. That's why I would suggest using this because you want to make sure the work was done right if it was that big of a deal. Now, if it's minor things, you might not worry.
Okay, so even though we select it, so even though we select the void only option, later we both agree, we signed the addendum, so everything should be follow the addendum, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Override the option 2, basically.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If they agree, then the home inspection contingency removal is removed, and they've agreed to additional items to be fixed. Yes.
Oh, okay. That's
Okay.
fine. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Good questions. Keep them coming. Okay, if there's no other questions about the home inspection addendum, then I want to go back to the beginning here. Now I want to real quickly visit paragraph 9 again. We talked about it in great length 2 weeks ago, but let's talk about paragraph 9 here. Just make sure we're on the same page as to this walkthrough stuff, okay? So everything comes in as this condition, as the date specified above, so date of home inspection, okay? And then it says here, okay, regardless of whether the contract is contingent on home inspections and or other inspections, seller will provide broker and buyer reasonable access to the property to make walkthrough inspections within 7 days. That not one, not a final. It doesn't say a final walkthrough. It says walkthrough inspections prior to settlement and or occupancy. So that's why if I'm a purchaser and there's some major things that have to be repaired and they have to bring in contractors to do it, that's why I might say that all this work has to be done 8 days prior to the settlement. So that when we come in 7 days, we have time enough, if this work hasn't been done, to get our own what? Estimates from our own contractors as to what it might cost to fix. All right. Now, I want to go to the removal form for this. Walkthrough removal, okay? And this is the walkthrough inspection form on page, it's form K1210, okay? Now it says, in accordance with the sales contract, walkthrough inspection or inspections were made on these dates, okay? And we inspected the existing items to determine if they are in, here's the key word, substantially the same physical condition as of the date specified in the property maintenance and condition paragraph of the contract, except as otherwise agreed. Now that you said you would take it into condition as of home inspection date. Okay. Now, if they messed up and they lost their right to the home inspection contingency, they had it done, it showed items wrong, but they missed their dates. Now we have an established condition of the property as of that date. And we know if it worked on that date, it still has to work at settlement. But let's say that they agreed to fix items. So you send over a list of 10 items, right? 10 items to be fixed. I'm the seller. I agreed that I would fix 5 and not fix 5. So the 5 I agreed that I would fix had to be now working, okay? And anything that worked on the date of that home inspection must still be working the same way, okay? If either of those items have not been completed or something has changed since that day, that would be a walkthrough item. So it says above each column, substantially the same condition. So there was no alarm system, still no alarm system. It would be NA. Now there was a built-in microwave. The built-in microwave works fine, just like it did at the home inspection. So we would answer, yes, it's still in the same condition. Now, I agreed that I would have the clothes dryer repaired. I did. Your buyer checks it, and it works fine now. Which box would we check? I'm not going to run you through that exercise, but it would be no. And this confuses agents, because if I said yes, it would have to be substantially the same condition, which means that clothes dryer is still broken. Okay, but since I had it fixed and it works, it's not in the same condition, it's working the way it's supposed to be, the answer should be no. Now, when it came to the clothes washer, I say it worked just fine. And you said, well, it could have used some minor fix up. But we both agreed I wouldn't fix it. Okay, and you check it and it still works the same way it did, not the way you want it to, but the way it did at the time of the home inspection, then you would check, yes, it still works lousy, but the condition hasn't gotten any worse. Okay. Now, let's say that the dishwasher worked fine at the home inspection, but now it doesn't seem to be operating properly. Would that be a walkthrough item? Yes. Okay. Because it's not substantially the same it was as of the home inspection report. So now you would check no and have to address it in the remarks section. Okay. And this form confuses a lot of people because they do not read substantially the same condition. So when they do their walkthrough, yes, it worked. They'll check, yes, it worked, or no, it didn't work, instead of what the form truly says. You okay with that form? A lot of times what I will see down here in the remarks section is everything worked fine. Okay. They didn't even attempt to fill out this. Now, the other part of this form, if discrepancies are noted, okay, the seller will correct discrepancies without an escrow. Now, if they don't do it, your buyer's got to go back and sue. Seller to credit buyer X amount of dollars. Don't do that unless you have the approval of the lender. Okay, so if you're going to give a credit, make sure the lender tells you how they want it drafted up to present to their underwriter. Okay, or the repairs can be made from funds held in escrow. Once again, if that lender, when they get the paperwork back, sees an escrow for these items, they may have a problem with that. So, and the other problem is, will the funds be the limit or not the limit of the seller's liability? If you didn't get estimates, okay, you could have a major difference in how much it cost. And if you limit the seller's liability to that, then your buyer might be a little bit upset. So that's why I say I would rather get my own estimates as a buyer and have the money paid directly to those parties and not be an escrow by the settlement agent. And once again, it notes all work has to be done by a licensed contractor to do the type of work required. Okay. Any questions about that form?
Hey, Larry, I got a quick question for you.
Okay.
On the home inspection and everything else, well, when you're doing the walkthrough and you've already told the sellers that they have to have all utilities on for the final inspection because they've already said that they've already fixed this oven by the walkthrough date, it's absolutely fixed, and you could come and check it on a walkthrough. And you go to the walkthrough and they don't have the utilities on, so you have no idea whether this oven is working or not.
Well,
What's
then
the remedy at that point?
well, the only thing you could do is take the word for it or ask for an escrow. And if you ask for an escrow, you got a problem. But, you know, I would send, and this is what my advice would be, because back here in this paragraph, okay, it says that, let me find it here. So in paragraph 9 of your contract, seller will have all utilities in service through settlement. Now they have breached a contractual term by not having it on through settlement. Okay. I generally send a notice over to the listing agent prior to, you know, a week beforehand and say, just a reminder that, you know, paragraph 9, we have to have the utilities on through settlement to be able to do our walkthrough.
But what I'm saying is that even if you sent the reminder and yet they still don't have the utilities on,
Okay.
can you extend the settlement?
You could ask to extend the settlement, but when does your buyer's loan commitment expire?
Most likely date of settlement.
So, how much is it gonna cost them to extend their loan commitment?
Uh,
Probably at least a point.
right.
So,
Uh,
that, how much did the stove cost?
let's say $1,000.
Okay, so it'd probably, you know, it would probably cost them a whole lot more. Now, you could ask for the money to be escrowed, but once again, if there's any escrow, it's gotta be approved by the what?
Lender.
The lender. So, you know, you've got a double-edged sword here, and what you're usually up against is the loan commitment. Now, the flip of that is back here in the contract, okay? Paragraph 30, it says, provisions not satisfied at settlement or survival of delivery of the deed and will not be merged therein. So since they had utilities weren't on, if your buyer moved in and then they found out that the stove didn't work, they still have a, you know, a way of going back against the seller, but would they want to go through all that, getting attorneys and all? So the only other, you know, the option is to ask for an escrow if the lender will allow it, which they probably won't, or take the seller's word for it. Okay. Now, when did another option would always be, when can your buyer turn utilities on in their name? Anytime. So the buyers might want to go ahead and have, you know, the day before, have the utilities put in their name the day before settlement. If you want to, you know, be really cautious. Most buyers aren't going to want to do that. They're going to say, I don't want to pay that extra day of utilities. So, I mean, we just have to give them the options of what could happen and, you know, go with it. But I understand your frustration, because when's the one time the utility companies will be ultra professional and on time to cut stuff off before settlement, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's another reason I think that they changed the language in our contract to say I have the right to do what? Walk through inspections. Okay. So you could do one, you know, if they told you the stove is working, then get over there and check it out, you know, 2 days beforehand, and then do your final walkthrough and make sure no damage on the way to settlement. There's no easy way around it. And I understand your frustration. I agree with you. It's happened to me before.
Larry, this is a quick question.
Uh-huh.
So if they do transfer the utilities the day before the settlement, for some reason, if the settlement postponed or canceled, what will happen?
If they do their walkthrough and it's postponed or canceled, then they still have the right to do walkthroughs 7 days prior to settlement. So they have the right to do other walkthroughs, you know, from the post payment.
No, I'm asking about the utility connections. So the buyer end
Oh.
up like,
Well, I mean, it's an option to take. How much do utilities cost you for 3 days or a
Okay.
week? You know, I mean, I'm just throwing out options to you, right?
right. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Somebody want to know what my email address is? It's broker, BROKER, Larry, LARRY, the numeral 1 at fairfaxrealty.com. We do have a new YouTube channel. We started another one. So if you Googled Larry Anderson, you know, real estate Fairfax, you could probably find the old one. And then the flyer, you should get, you know, announcing these classes are going to happen. Embedded in there, they usually have the link to the YouTube channel. So what we did is we put up the last 3 recordings, plus this one to go up on the new site. So if you contact Jocelyn here at the Fairfax Tyson's office, she probably has that link also. Okay. Or shoot me an email and I will, you know, forward it to them and they'll get you that site. Okay. Any other questions today? Okay. If not, thank you for joining me. Next Monday, I think, is Labor Day, so we won't be on. We'll pick up the following Monday. Okay?
And Larry, can I ask you one more thing here?
Absolutely.
Larry, can you do that? It's called as is condition home, because recently I saw this more and more as is condition. The listing agent put them on the remark section. So when I look at this, I'm not sure how do we handle that, because I don't know what the you know, how much, if there is a negotiation room, you know, we can.
Probably not in this market.
Okay.
But in a normal market, yes. But let me see if I can go back here and find the contingencies and clauses addendum. Because if I'm the listing agent, as is doesn't really mean too much to me, because I can make an argument. Our contract says as is means except as otherwise specified herein. So if I am, need to find the contingencies and clauses addendum form. If I'm the listing agent, I am also going to request an as is that you have to use the contingency and clauses addendum. Let's find it here.
Who uses it? The listing agent or the buyer agent?
Well, if I'm the listing agent and I'm saying the property has to come as is,
Right.
then I am requesting that Form K-1344 be submitted with the contract, or I'm going to suggest that my seller counter back with this form for what as is property truly means. So if you see on this, as is means all clauses pertaining to trash and debris, I could leave everything in the property, you clean it out, or smoke detectors, or termite and wood destroying insects, delete it, or all clauses pertaining to compliance with orders and notices of violation of county or state zoning or health requirements, and all requirements for POA and condo. Because I'm not sure as is takes out these, because our state law says that a seller has to give you, if they've received a written notice or an order of violation of county or local authority, our law says they have to give you that one-page disclosure form telling you. If not, then they've got a violation. So if you're putting as is property on the market, then you need to request this and have all these clauses removed from the sales contract. Okay, and that'd be a good topic. Maybe we'll do as is property condition and my take on it for the first session when we come back. I'll make a note to myself. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Len.
Okay.
Thank you, Len.